on Sky News Australia. This is the Rita Panahi Show.
Good evening and welcome to the Rita Panahi Show. Coming up tonight, the Albanese government's Future Made in Australia agenda set to deepen the budget deficit. Chris Bowen urged to reset Australia's gas policy as Labor's market interventions cause a new crisis. Professor Ian Plimer will be with me shortly to discuss all that. A South Australian police officer that identifies as a cat. Yes, the furries have made it onto the police force. Can't wait to hear what Prix has to say about all that. The wonderful Alex Stein will bring us the latest madness from the US, where there has been a fight back of sorts on college campuses as patriotic students take a stand against Marxist activists. And Kinsey Schofield will bring us the latest royal and celebrity news, including Oscar winner Kevin Spacey breaking his silence.
How much this has all cost you?
Everything.
Can you elaborate on that? What do you mean specifically?
I've lost my jobs. I've lost my house. I've got 1 foot in bankruptcy.
But let's start with a horrific story, every parent's worst nightmare, with 2 Australian brothers murdered in Mexico during what was to be a dream vacation, a surfing odyssey that has turned into a nightmare. Officials have revealed more details on what they believe happened to Callum and Jake Robinson and their American friend Carter Rode. Mexican authorities say thieves killed the trio in order to steal their truck, particularly because they wanted the truck's tyres. Police said all 3 victims died from a single gunshot wound to the head. The parents of the Perth brothers have arrived in Mexico, and though officials are waiting for DNA results, the Robinson brothers' parents will attempt to identify their boys by sight. Let's bring in Prue McSween, Sky News contributor. Prue, authorities have stated that the assailants killed one of the trio as they tried to stop the car theft, and the others were killed once they came to the assistance of their companion. 3 young lives snuffed out over car tyres.
It's everyone's worst nightmare, isn't it, Rita? When you look at these beautiful boys, who were contributing so much and had so much of life to enjoy. One was a doctor, one was a very successful sports athlete. No, I don't know about the American, but clearly, no one deserves to go through this. What great adventure they had, and they've been wiped out by some lowlifes. And of course, what annoys me, is the backpedaling and the assurances from the authorities that it's not normally what would happen here. We're outraged, but this is a particularly dangerous part of the world, and it's just sad that so many people don't understand what they're risking by going there. So it's a salient warning, and the world's lost, some beautiful young men with so much potential.
Now to WA, and a knife-wielding teenager believed to have been radicalised online has been shot dead by police after he stabbed a man at a Perth Bunnings. The 16-year-old reportedly told his friends that he was on the path of jihad and claimed that he was a soldier of the Mujahideen of Al-Qaeda. This teenager had converted to Islam, and it's been reported that he had attempted to influence some other students at his high school to adopt his extremist views. That had seen him spend more than 2 years in a de-radicalisation program.
Well, a couple of points to this. Firstly, the de-radicalisation programs are not working clearly. For people to, whether it be governments or, education departments, whoever it is who administers them, they need to revise them because it ain't working. And the other thing that's concerning is that given that the school was very aware that this kid had been trying to indoctrinate other students, and it was reported by a parent, well, I have to say, firstly, what were his parents doing? I find it astounding that parents of these kids, and we've seen, other acts of violence and kids who have been radicalised, what are their parents doing? How out of touch are they with their kids, and what kind of an upbringing are they having in their families? And then you have to look at, well, if there were warning signs a couple of years ago when he was 14, what are the authorities doing? Again, what were the parents doing? It's not enough to say, oh, well, mental illness. It's not good enough. And meanwhile, we have ridiculous laws that are not shutting down hate speech by Islamist preachers in mosques. And we then have, the Islam community, thankfully they did reach out and start stating their concerns, but, they need to step up and stop this from happening in the mosques. They have a culpability as well.
Well, the police have said in this instance they were contacted by members of the community who alerted them, so that's fantastic. But you do make the excellent point here that he wasn't a de-radicalisation program. He was obviously on some sort of a watch list, and yet he almost killed a man. I mean, the guy's very lucky to be alive after this stabbing, so it does make you wonder about what police have opened to them to do something before a crime of this magnitude is committed when they know someone is radicalised. Now let's talk the budget. Jim Chalmers is about to do the opposite of what many leading economists have called for. The Australian Financial Review reports next week's budget was going to be expansionary, not contractionary. And the Treasury is planning bigger budget deficits over the next 4 years than those forecast just 6 months ago, Prue. And that means the budget's not going to do much to contain inflation. In fact, you could say it's going to add inflationary pressure and therefore interest rate pressure.
Exactly. The RBA's been forced to do any of the work, and this government, meanwhile, is spending like a drunken sailor. It's just astounding. We need a contractionary budget. Everybody is telling us and yet it's expansionary. We're pledging millions of dollars. I mean, look at the what was it, 40 million spent on an ad campaign promoting, the tax cuts by this government. I mean, how dare they spend our money? 40 million bucks. God, what could that have done to hospitals if they were going to spend the money, or to schools? And then they've got this making, Australia, or Australia's future fund, manufacturing future fund. I mean, again, ludicrous. Money going to an American company, solar panels that we know, people are using solar panels to make fences because there's such an oversupply. I mean, this government has lost the plot, and we know it's typical Labor. All they know is how to spend, and in the lead up to the election, that's what they're going to do. The big bicky's out to try and con people, and people fall for it.
Well, on the topic of big spending, they've taken a leaf out of Joe Biden's playbook. The Albanese government is appealing to younger voters. They're not forgiving student loans, Prue, but they are cutting the indexation rates on university loans, the HEX payments. So that's going to deliver a $1,200 saving for the average person who has a HEX debt. Prue, that's another $3 billion in the budget. It's not a small amount.
It's not a small amount, but if it means that some of these kids are going to vote Labor or not vote Green, which is probably part of the equation, then they don't care about running up this debt. And as you say, it's not going to forgive the debt. What it's just doing is stopping them having to pay them what they would have been paying a bit more, because it's linked to the CPI and not the wages price index. So, look, we all would love the kids to not have any HEX debt, but sadly, Australians can't afford to be, subsidising student university degrees, and that's the problem. So it's again smoke and mirrors from the government. It's like the $275 energy price discount. We all know that they love telling lies, but it's a great headline and people fall for it. They don't worry about reading the detail.
And yeah, that was the front page of the dailies yesterday, that HEX largesse. Let's talk about Qantas. Their phantom flight saga has finally had a resolution. Initially, they claimed it wasn't their fault, but they've now taken responsibility for the blunder and agreed to a $120 million settlement with the ACCC, with the airline to launch a $20 million compensation program for customers. So, Prue, that means around 86,000 Qantas passengers will receive payments ranging from $225 to $450. I presume you have to claim this money, and I bet plenty of people like me won't claim. So it'll be interesting to see how much they end up paying out.
Exactly, and it's good that they have been fined the $100 million. Hudson, the new CEO, is trying to clean up the mess. But what arrogance of this company to think that they could get away with this, these ghost flights that were being sold for weeks after they knew that they'd been cancelled. It's just unforgivable. And the damage to Qantas's brand, just when people are saying, oh, well, they're turning it around, but you'd have to think twice about forgiving this brand because they have contempt for the customers. This is no way to treat your customers. And the arrogance is quite astounding. So, Qantas can make all the ads they want about, seeing kids, spirit of Australia. The spirit of Qantas is really questionable. And, that's something that it's going to take years for them to overcome and rebuild.
Well, I flew them yesterday, and of course, as soon as you land, you get those unwelcome political messages around acknowledgement of country. They have not learnt their lessons there. We know they were very much part of the Yes campaign for the race-based referendum, and despite the fact that 61% of us voted no, they're persisting with this activism and shoving it down their passengers' throats, but you have very little choice in this country when it comes to airlines. Now, let's go to this story. I can't wait to hear your take on this. A report from the Adelaide Advertiser about a South Australian police officer who identifies as a cat. Thankfully, only when he's out of police uniform. This hasn't made it into his official duties. He's part of the furry subculture. The officer, reportedly in his late 20s, is based at an Adelaide station. Prue, identifying as non-binary, I guess that's very old now. That's very 2023. It's all about the furries.
Well, clearly, I mean, what I'm concerned about is what is he going to do when he confronts a cat burglar? Is he going to go soft? I mean, it's just bizarre, isn't it? And when you think about it, I mean, aren't they all supposed to go through psychological testing? This guy slipped through the kitty litter or something. I don't know, but boy, oh boy, we are going mad in this country. And wow, do you have faith in calling the cops anymore? If you're a dog lover, for God's sake.
He might be very heavy-handed with a dog off the leash crime. I mean, he'll just be throwing the book at those ones. Now, Prue, let's talk about some of the supposed political experts, the pundits, analysts who always tell the Liberals that they're leaning too far to the right. They've got to go further left. Over and over, they get egg on their face, but they keep delivering this message, and sadly, a lot of Liberals listen to them. That's why so many of them are in trouble right now. This post from the chief political correspondent of The Guardian is doing the rounds on X again, causing much mirth. This is Paul Karp. He posted this. He said, Nikki Sava says the killing season for Peter Dutton's leadership will be the end of 2023 after the Voice referendum. Yep. Pop it in the diary. Well, yeah, we did, and here we are. They always think Conservatives could only win if they pretend not to be conservative, when precisely the opposite is true. And you only have to look at The Voice or look at the Victorian Libs, the WA Libs at the last election, or the federal Libs when they embraced net zero, to see how badly things go for Conservatives when they veer left, not right.
Well, exactly. You know, what Dutton needs to do to win this leadership and to win the election, just do the opposite. To whatever Labor says and Greens say, do the opposite. And be a true Conservative Party representative, and you'll kill it.
Prue McSween, thank you so much. Now let's bring in Professor Ian Plimer. Professor Plimer, let's talk about the self-inflicted gas crisis facing Australia. Even Chris Bowen is calling for new gas supplies to provide cheap, reliable energy. But we have state Labor governments, including right here in Victoria, declaring a fatwa against gas, even banning gas appliances in new homes.
Well, your state fatwa actually was started by the Nationals, who started a campaign confusing conventional gas with fracking. And the Libs then took that up, Labor then took it up and has excelled. In Victoria, you have an enormous amount of onshore gas in Gippsland area. This gas is low in carbon dioxide, it's low in mercury. The 5 wells that I've been to and seen them flaring these wells, they are within 2 kilometres of a pipeline. Victoria has stacks of gas. If you go to the other basin, the Otway Basin, it also has stacks of gas. And in Victoria, you're allowed to drill a well from onshore Otway Basin to collect offshore gas, but you can't drill it onshore to collect onshore gas. That is madness. It is no wonder Victoria has a gas shortage. New South Wales has a gas shortage because we have massive reserves of gas at Narrabri, and that has taken more than a decade to try to get that up, producing gas for the people. Queensland does have a lot of gas, and Eastern Australia relies on Queensland for gas. It also relies on Queensland for electricity because Queensland still has coal-fired power stations which are providing the electricity when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. So it's about time that we woke up to ourselves and realised that we cannot go backwards into poverty, that we have to have the power systems we once had, which were cheap and reliable.
How much gas do you think we have? Is it decades of supply, years? Do we have any idea how much clean, reliable source of energy we're sitting on?
Rita, you'll be pushing up daisies when we run out of gas. We have thousands of years of gas in Australia. We have thousands of years of coal, especially in Victoria, which is the cheapest coal that we can produce in Australia. And we have millions of years of uranium. So why are we ignoring these types of energy systems, which are well established and well known? We don't have to rebuild grids. We don't have to destroy huge areas of farmland with these solar power plants, with wind turbines, and have power lines going across perfectly good farmland. We've already got the infrastructure. Why are we destroying so much farmland? What is wrong with Labor politicians where they want to destroy farmers to stop farmers putting food on the plates of people in the city? What is wrong with them?
Well, probably they've never stepped foot on a farm. They've got no idea about how their food ends up on their plate. This is the problem when you are so divorced from reality. You've just come through the party structure, through the unions, and now you're an MP, you're sitting in cabinet, you're making these decisions. Let's go to the issue of offshore wind projects. 6 offshore wind projects have won feasibility licences from the government, which means in the coming years, Ian, construction is likely to commence on Australia's first ever offshore wind project. Now, tell me, is this our saviour? Is this a good idea?
Well, it doesn't save anything. Offshore wind gets the green light to build these platforms out on the continental shelf. Whereas to build an offshore gas or oil facility, again, requires environmental lawfare going on for decades. These offshore wind facilities change the aviation patterns, they change shipping patterns, they change fishing patterns, and they kill a lot of wildlife. By killing wildlife offshore, you cannot see the bodies. They probably disturb whale migration and probably kill whales. Now, we know that onshore wind turbines kill birds, kill bats, destroy a very large amount of the environment with land clearing. We know that onshore solar is even worse. So offshore basically puts the problem out of sight. And these would not be viable if there weren't massive subsidies. Now, elsewhere in the world, offshore wind is being cancelled for all the right environmental movements. So what is it about the Greens? The Greens are destroying the environment. They are creating poverty. Why do they want to do this?
Well, it's sad when you see just these solar projects when you are flying around the country and these massive solar farms that are popping up, and they absolutely are a blight on the landscape. And if you love the Australian landscape, and who doesn't? Well, except possibly greenies, because they never get out to the country. Why would you want to destroy this beautiful scenery with things like solar farms or wind farms?
Well, a scenic vista used to be regarded as part of the environment. Apparently now it isn't. We have ridges covered in these wind turbines. We have prime agricultural land in valleys covered by solar panels. And what we don't hear from the Greens is the long-term effects of the pollution. For example, solar panels leak out cadmium telluride. They leak out lead. These go into the soils. That's left there. It doesn't leach out. When we get rid of solar panels, we leave a huge environmental disaster behind. And these are areas which later we might want to use for growing food. In the case of wind turbines, they pollute very large areas with extraordinary dangerous chemicals. And instead of trying to dispose of these wind turbine blades, we bury them, or we cut them up and bury them, and there is no industry at all where we can recycle these. So these are the worst possible decisions we could make for electricity in this country. We have plenty of energy. It is cheap energy, and there's nothing wrong with putting plant food into the atmosphere. There's nothing wrong with feeding the plants, whereas these alternatives to energy, wind and solar, actually destroy plant life.
Now, finally, a regular on this program, Alex Epstein, he does a fantastic job highlighting some of the climate catastrophizing, he calls it, where these global warming activists, scientists make all sorts of doomsday predictions that, of course, never come to fruition. Remember, one of these was acid rain. It was going to kill all of us, Ian, acid rain. Let me read this extract from the New York Times to remind our viewers about what damage acid rain was going to do. Rainfall with an acidity level of vinegar has been reported in widely separated areas of the earth in recent years, and the trend towards more acidic rain has been accelerating. This is all from the New York Times. Back in 1979, Ian, what happened to acid rain? Why isn't it an issue anymore?
Well, it's like all these catastrophe scare stories. They are blatantly wrong, and they're demonstrably wrong, and the science is wrong. Rain is acid. It always has been acid. We can measure it. And as soon as that acid rain hits rocks or hits the soil, it gets converted into slightly alkaline material, which then ends up in the oceans. The acid rain story was a really big story in Europe in the 70s. We were going to lose all the forests of Europe. Now, these forests did not get destroyed. What is destroying them now is putting in wind turbines and solar farms in areas where there's very little wind, and solar areas in high latitudes where you've got very little sun. So these great scare campaigns have all shown to be wrong. We've had 2,000 years of people telling us the world's going to end by some great catastrophe. Now, if just one of these got it right, we wouldn't be here.
Ian Plimer, thank you so much for your time this evening. Still to come, Alex Stein joins me with the latest from the US, including the frat boy fight back on university campuses And what's happening with Trump and his many, many legal cases? You're watching the Rita Panahi Show. Joining me now with the latest from the US is one of our favourites, Alex Stein. Alex, let's talk about what's happening on college campuses. We've had weeks of anti-Israel, anti-America, anti-Western civilization protests and riots. But there is a fight back of sorts starting to occur, perhaps a domino effect from the North Carolina frat boys who protected the American flag from these Marxist masked morons. Now we're seeing students from around the country, mainly red states, take a stand for America. Certainly at Ole Miss, the patriotic boys and girls were outnumbering the protesters, but that's an exception. In most of the campuses, these kids are a minority.
Well, no, that's very true, except for, at the University of Texas and Columbia, when they arrested these people, Rita, have you noticed that a lot of them aren't even students? These are basically paid activists that are going to these schools and doing this, because you're right, at Ole Miss, they were outnumbered. At LSU, where I graduated from, the pro-American protesters outnumbered the Palestinian protesters. But even though this is, kind of funny for us to laugh at, these college kids LARPing as, activists, live action role playing, I do believe, and this isn't just something I've created, Christopher Wray has said this, the director of the FBI, is that there is going to be some sort of attack or something bad is going to happen at one of these protests, Rita. And I hope that doesn't happen, but just with all the tension rising, and I don't think it's going to be a college student. I think it'll be one of these professional provocateurs or professional agitators that are at these protests that are organized similar to how George Soros organizes DAs in all these liberal cities.
Well, I think you're right there, and you've seen it yourself. You've gone out there and spoken to these protesters and just how hostile some of them are. We had Army Horowitz on the program last week. He showed up to a protest, not saying a word, just holding an American flag, and he was set upon straight away, Alex, attacked physically by multiple people.
Well, I'm not surprised. Ami did good work. He did have an American flag, and obviously that's going to make him a target. Not that he deserved that at all, but, when it comes to these protests, just saying they want something to happen, Rita. I've been to all sorts of protests, and I've never been able to feel the tension as palpable than I have at these protests. But what else is weird that I've noticed is that other than Middle Eastern people, Arab people at these protests, all of the white people seem to be either gay or transsexual or transgender. And I'm not even kidding. I'm telling you, it was literally a trans protest, Trans for Palestine at the University of Texas, where I was attacked. So these same people that are protesting for a country that wouldn't even accept them. So it's just so hypocritical and really not based in reality.
Well, it's good to see that those boys that we showed earlier protecting the American flag, they've had a GoFundMe to throw them a massive party, and it's raised more than $500,000, Alex. So they're going to have an epic party at some point. So that's fantastic. But let's check in with the protesters and see what sound arguments they're making and precisely what's triggering them. Yeah, that meltdown was inspired by just the sight of the Israeli flag. That's the sort of reaction you get. Now let's talk about something a little bit different. Tom Brady was the subject of a roast. You lot do roasts better than anybody. I don't think it's actually a phenomenon anywhere else that I've seen, but you people are vicious with these roasts, and Tom Brady's was particularly brutal. Most of it I can't play here. Some of it was frankly obscene, but this is a little bit we can play.
So, hey, look, buddy, you have more rings than I do, but I've experienced a couple things that you will never experience. You know, the feeling of being the #1 overall draft pick in the NFL. And a 28th wedding anniversary. It was yesterday.
I don't know how much of this you've caught. It's just happened in the last few hours. What do you make of that? And was Tom Brady a good sport about it all?
Well, it just shows you Tom Brady, one of the most successful men in the entire world, still has his wife can cheat on him. So, I mean, if it can happen to him, it can happen to anybody. So that's kind of scary. And then, what's really even crazy, though, about this, about the roast is all of the Aaron Hernandez jokes, who was a guy that was arrested for a double murder, when it's still kind of funny. But I'm just surprised. Yeah. I bet the NFL is going to have a hissy fit about this. They're not going to like Bill Belichick and all of these potential Hall of Fame players saying, some of the most, obnoxious things. But I'm all for it. I loved it. The crazier the roast is, the better, in my opinion. But you're right. They were an 11 out of 10 during this roast.
The Americans know how to do a roast. I just don't think you couldn't imagine the Poms doing something like this consistently with big stars, because you could just imagine there'd be punch-ons happening with some of the things that are said. Now, let's talk about the Trump hush money trial. The prosecution's decision to put Trump's former White House aide Hope Hicks on the stand appears to have backfired, because Hicks, by some accounts, has pretty much demolished the prosecution's primary claim regarding Trump's motivation for the payment. Tell me the latest about this criminal trial and why legal experts are saying that Hicks' testimony hurt the prosecution.
Well, first of all, this is a kangaroo court. I mean, there have been so many politicians before Donald Trump that have paid off people and didn't get in any trouble. I mean, Bill Clinton had an intern inside the Oval Office of the White House, didn't get in any trouble. So, they're just afraid of Donald Trump. They're trying to remove him from this election any way possible. And I say this, I think this will help him in a lot of, the African-American communities and communities where people have felt like they were targeted. And if they're paying attention, they're probably noticing that Donald Trump is being targeted. So I think this could actually help him. But at the same time, it's tough when he's worried that he can't go to his son's graduation, which now he can go to Barron's. But still, just all of those weird things that make it where he has no personal freedom. And he's the president. Every single president could be in jail. I mean, Barack Obama dropped a drone strike every 20 minutes for 8 years. I mean, George Bush did some horrible stuff too. So, none of these presidents are perfect people, and they're holding Trump to a higher standard than they would anybody else because they want him eliminated.
Now, to reports of illegal immigrants, including Chinese nationals, crossing into the US and immediately ripping up all their papers. Let's hear from a local mayor.
All of these IDs on the wall are IDs that he's found in his yard that people have just discarded after they've crossed the border. These are Middle Eastern IDs. We've got lots of people here from Turkey. But over here is really interesting. Well, all these IDs on the top they're Mexican IDs, but they're Chinese nationals. And I have no idea how they get the Mexican ID, but these are people from China.
Chinese nationals, what motivation could they have for getting rid of their identification papers, Alex? And why do they have Mexican ones?
Well, that's because they don't want a paper trail of who they are, because then they would be, they would come up if they looked them up. So what's going on with our border is disgusting, that these people can go on planes and fly on American Airlines without any sort of ID. But if I try to do it, they wouldn't ever let me on a plane. So it's, a two-tier justice system. And listen, China, I'm worried that we might have to get in a war defending Taiwan, but at the same time, China's winning basically an internal war because they're the ones that are responsible for a lot of the fentanyl that is coming through our border. So, I mean, China is a very smart country. They have very smart people in that country, and they know how to game our system better than an American knows how to game our system. And that's why they're able to come here and get free Visa prepaid gift cards in New York City and free hotel rooms that are worth, $300 or $400 a night. And, they know how to game the system better than Americans do.
Now, Alex, you and your antics are inspiring a new generation of troublemakers, including this dude who has taken your shtick and personalised it to terrorise the Austin City Council. Have a look.
Because the state is trying to erase my identity as a female.
And just like my comrades in Palestine, I am also a victim of genocide.
I am a beautiful trans woman, and the state is trying to invalidate my existence because Greg Abbott is an actual Nazi.
Alex, what have you done? What have you started here?
Well, Rita, I know Alex Stranger, and sadly, you're 100% right. He's basically an understudy of mine, and I let him loose, and now I can't stop him. It's like Pandora's box. So this is 100% my fault, but Alex Stranger will be so happy to see this clip. He's going to share it all over, so you made his day. And listen, we need more people lampooning these politicians. When you go up there and you speak seriously, they don't pay attention at all. I'm not saying that everybody has to go there and put on a women's tuck-friendly bathing suit like me or put on a wig like Alex Stranger, but it definitely puts them on their toes and heels, whatever metaphor you want to use, a lot more than being serious. So that's just the state of American politics. It's a clown world, Rita.
But you are the original and the best, and you were out at Sacramento, not with a local council, just trying to speak to these protesters. And you wanted to give them an opportunity to put their case forward, but it didn't go well.
No, they're not saying anything. Everybody has masks on. Are you still worried about COVID? This guy's having trouble breathing. So what are you doing out here today? Any comment? Since you're a lesbian, what do you think about how they treat gay people in Palestine? Like, what's the end goal? What are you guys trying to do with all this?
Just no love for you at all in Sacramento. Did anybody speak to you? Did anybody tell you why they were protesting?
No, as a matter of fact, nobody spoke with me. And when you brought up October 7th, that's when people started pouring water on me, going crazy, because they can't defend what happened on October 7th. So it's just a sad, sad scene. But I think it's all going to end soon. I do think that there's going to be protests that happen, and there's going to still happen in major cities. But a lot of the college protests, since it's May and the universities are about to let out for summer, I think the college protests will die down, but then they'll just start doing the protests in major cities, you know. So it's not going to stop, but I think it will be limited very shortly from the colleges, in my opinion.
I think you're right, Alex. It is election year, so it's protest season, but yeah, possibly not at college campuses. Alex Stein, thank you so much for your time tonight. Still to come, Kevin Spacey breaks his silence in a tell-all interview. And is this the ultimate manipulation from Meghan Markle? Kinsey Schofield is up next. Welcome back. Actor Kevin Spacey is back in the news with fresh allegations of sexual misconduct coming to light in recent days. But Kevin Spacey has hit back this time with a tell-all interview with Dan Wooten. He has denied the allegations and spoken about the impact cancellation has had on him.
How much this has all cost you?
Everything.
Can you elaborate on that? What do you mean specifically?
I've lost my jobs. I've lost my house. I've got 1 foot in bankruptcy. Everything.
Mm. And that's despite the fact you've never been found guilty of a single crime.
No, and actually the timing of all of this just once again coming just as I'm getting more jobs.
Joining me now is celebrity and royal reporter Kinsey Schofield. Kinsey, what was your reaction to this interview? It goes for about 90 minutes. It's very in-depth. It goes over so many of these allegations. And it is worth noting, as you saw there in that clip, he has won every legal battle so far on this front, but he's gone from being a Hollywood A-lister to almost broke.
That's right. And I'm glad he reminded us, because I covered the trials, the multiple trials, and I even forget that he was found innocent. But Spacey offers a pretty forensic response to every single accusation. Some are just described as miscommunications or the cultural shift thanks to the Me Too movement. Other accusations are completely obliterated with facts. Ages did not match up. He wasn't even in the city or state that he's accused of being in by the accuser. And he provided Wooten with that tangible evidence to back himself up. So clearly this is something he's trying to nip in the bud. He's ready to get back to work. And I think he's just exhausted by the constant, just in his coming from his point of view, he feels like this is just cancellation, and people with people that are envious of him, people that want something from him, whether it be money or attention, and he thinks that it's truly unfair.
It is a fascinating interview. It's online if you want to watch it for yourself. But what do you think the reaction to this is going to be, and whether it's going to change the public's perception of this? Because we saw with Johnny Depp, he was cancelled in a much smaller fashion, it must be said, but his reputation went through a battering, and then that court case really restored it. And I wonder whether Kevin Spacey is hoping something like that happens for him.
I think Kevin Spacey is such a talented actor, but he doesn't have the fan base and the passionate fan base that Johnny Depp has. So he will get back to work, and it will be because he's so incredibly talented and he's such a quirky artist. But I don't think he's going to have that shock, just kind of cleanse that Johnny Depp had after his trial with Amber Heard.
Yeah, it was interesting. Like Johnny Depp, we're watching this interview, and I think the reason why it was believable, and it's changed my mind about this whole saga, is that he was willing to admit to poor behaviour. It wasn't that I'm completely pure, innocent. He was willing to admit to some clumsy behaviour, being too overeager, all sorts of misdemeanors that don't really amount to crimes, but certainly paint a picture of what happened. And some of these allegations go back 36, 37 years. 50. So we're talking a long time.
Yeah, 50
some
years
of them
was
50
one of
years ago.
Yeah. He said, I don't know how I'm going to disprove that one, but I'll figure it out,
Well, this is part of the problem, because if you're accused of something that happened that long ago, just your memory of the event and trying to refute what someone has said, it's going to take some digging through archives to see if you can even do it. Now, Kinsey, you're part of this exclusive. You're behind this exclusive involving Meghan Markle. Please tell me this story about her talking to the late Princess Diana. That can't be real. What's going on?
So this story was about how Meghan Meghan got into Prince Harry's life, and how she made herself very, familiar to him, and how she likely lured him in to a relationship by knowing some key points about Princess Diana. A friend of hers for over 30 years, who she has stopped talking to, has said that Meghan had a book about Princess Diana, Her True Story by Andrew Morton, on her bookshelf, and that after Diana died, they had planned a little charity event at their school. So she says that Meghan was very much familiar with Princess Diana, and in that conversation, it came up that Princess Beatrice has told friends, allegedly, that she overheard Meghan Markle tell Prince Harry at the Queen's Platinum Jubilee that during yoga that morning, while Meghan Markle was doing yoga that morning, along with her, that's her routine, that Princess Diana spoke to her and let her know that Diana was glad that her and Harry had chosen to attend the events along with his family.
Wow. What? So if this is true, then Prince Harry is convinced that his late mother is communicating with Meghan in her yoga sessions or wherever this is happening.
I guess it's during meditation. I don't know. I don't hear people. No one talks to me during yoga, Rita. I can tell you that much.
Well, you would think if that was happening and Diana could speak to anybody, she'd be speaking to her sons, possibly not Meghan, but, you know, if that story is true, gosh, you can
something about the downward
part
dog
of the hold she has on him. Well, yeah, I don't want to think about what pose ushers in Diana. But, you know, she's in trouble when even the comics at Saturday Night Live are mocking her.
King Charles will visit Kenya next week, where he is expected to acknowledge Britain's role in the slave trade and unfortunately attempt to return Meghan. I just report the news, guys.
I'm glad I didn't tell it.
Wow, yeah, that was one of the few times Saturday Night Live was actually funny. Now, let's talk about Britney Spears. She's reportedly spending her millions so quickly that there are fears that she may be left penniless, according to sources close to her. She has no concept of money and she is blowing through her finances, booking things like private jets, not even using them some of the time. And it comes, Kinsey, as tensions between her and her sister Jamie Lynn continue to escalate. What's the latest there?
Yeah, I mean, it's not just private jets. She stays in the presidential suites when she vacations. She spends a lot of time on vacation, spending between $300,000 and $1 million a trip. And according to acquaintances, they do feel like she's going broke. She refuses to work. She associates work with, the alleged abuse by her father, which is unfortunately, unfortunate because she's incredibly talented. But we are seeing her lashing out at her family again on social media. It's not just her financial situation. People are concerned about her mental situation too, with recent fights with her current boyfriend. And people are concerned for her safety.
Well, she's also seems to be surrounded by just the worst type of people. She doesn't have anybody who is a family member, someone who's as a childhood friend. She doesn't see her boys at all, which is terribly sad. And she seems to have alienated most of her family as well. I mean, is there anyone really looking out for her best interests?
Her attorney, and he charges by the hour. But really, that seems to be the only sane person that's fighting for her in her corner and trying to take care of her.
Now, finally, the Formula One Grand Prix was in Miami and all the celebs turned out. Ed Sheeran was there, Kendall Jenner, the Kardashians, Tom Brady, but it was Donald Trump who seemed to steal the show, Kinsey. Tell me about what an A-list magnet this event is.
Yeah, I mean, you listed some of the biggest names, Travis Kelce, Rihanna, and Donald Trump. And he is, without a doubt, the biggest character we have in this country. You never know what you're going to get with him. And Florida, the famous Sunshine State, they are Trump lovers. So absolutely, the crowd lost their mind when he showed up. He got a lot of love. And these are the kind of moments he needs, I think, for his just mentally when he's going through everything he's going through in the court system right now.
Kinsey Schofield, thank you so much for your time this evening. And that's it for me. I'll see you at 11 tomorrow. Up next is Newsnight.